All right, let's do this homework. This is week 10, chapter 11 and 12. Let's begin this sucker. Question 1. I was looking at GDP, looking at inflation, these two chapters. So, final goods and services are those that are sold to the ultimate final purchasers. Um, so again, just a quick explanation of GDP, C plus I plus G. Again, this is basically talking about the C part. Um, Question 2, nominal GDP. Of course, when you see that, there's got to be compared to real GDP. I'm having trouble talking this morning, but is a measure of GDP that adjusts for price changes. No, real that looks at the adjusted for inflation or price changes. So this is false. Depreciation, this is what you do in accounting. For those of you taking accounting, this should be an easy one, right? It's the wear and tear of private investment. You buy a new machine, it gets a little wear the first year. It's not, you can't sell it for as much as you bought it for, so you get to depreciate that change in price off your taxes, which is a big deal to businesses. Question 4. GDP is supposed to measure the goods, what produced in the United States, because it does do the purchases, again, what's sold to consumers, but it also takes into account the I part, where stuff that's created by businesses is not sold yet. So C plus I plus G for GDP. If real GDP was 100 in 2011 and 104 in 2012, of course, this has got to be a new minus old divided by old thing, and it makes it easier here. It's divided by 100. So 104 minus 100 divided by 100 is that one there, right? 4.4%. You can do that one in my head. Moving on. As compared to the estimates of the natural rate of unemployment for the United States, those in Europe are higher, right? And again, a lot of people would point to this because of the tight labor market. They have these restrictions on the labor market. Again, I hire somebody in France, I have to almost employ them for the rest of their lives. It's hard to fire people. I have to give them 4 weeks vacation. So with those high restrictive labor laws, in Europe, companies are less likely to hire young workers because they're really taking on a burden. So again, unemployment rate for especially for the youth in Europe is really high. All right, question 7. Auto workers laid off in the hot rod auto works because of recession. Because of recession, again, this is the cyclical unemployment, the boom and bust, which question 8 is kind of redundantly asks you again. Cyclical unemployment occurs, of course, when there's fluctuations in the economy during boom and bust times. Here they call it bad times and good times. Fine. Question 9. An economic expansion might lead to inflation because an expansion, I guess putting this question in the final because it's kind of like Hayek's point that if we're trying in a recession, Keynes says we have to stimulate the economy with more government spending. But if this basically, if we're putting stimulus in the wrong time, again, sometimes it takes a while to collect the data and understand the data. So maybe GDP isn't going down, maybe it's on the upswing, and you're stimulating the economy when it's really expanding. And that may lead to inflation, which is really bad for businesses. So this, if we expansion may lead to inflation because there would be a decrease in unemployment and an increase in wages, right? Because again, we're stimulating the economy during an upswing. So basically, you overheat an economy by government involvement. So again, it's too complex for Mr. Hayek to stimulate the economy at different times in the business cycle because it's really hard to determine where you are in the business cycle looking at statistics. But anyway, question 10. The economists say that the economy is at full employment, right? Of course, when there's the cyclical rate is 0. Again, frictional unemployment when companies close down because nobody wants to buy their products anymore. So resources and labor have to go to another job. And it just takes a little time for that to self-adjust. Structural, we don't have the right training or people for the certain jobs. We need to do some retraining of workers, which a lot of people will say we have a high structural unemployment right now. But anyway, I'm moving on. Question 11. If you take out a bank loan prior to anticipated inflation, well, this is good for you. If you take out a bank loan and before there's inflation, so I'm taking it out and I got to repay it at 4% interest rate. And then inflation, let's say, goes up to 10%, right? My wages theoretically will go up too in an inflationary time. So I'm gaining money and have to pay back the bank less money because I'm still paying them back at that low interest rate that I took the loan out. So we will gain at the expense of a bank. So if there is a high inflation on the horizon, you're going to see bank stocks go down a lot. But right now, inflation is fairly stable in this country. But it's kind of risky for banks in a way. All right, question 12. In the United States during the 50s and 60s, yeah, inflation rate was really low, right? It was around 2%. You can take my history of economics course because this is really kind of a boom time for the U.S. economy in the 50s and the 60s. Some people will point out is because the inflation rate was low and businesses could make rational decisions into the future. But there are a lot of causes of what goes on in the 50s and 60s. Even though there are a couple of recessions during the 1950s, it's generally thought of as a boom time for the U.S. economy. All right, last one. Suppose the price index in Paraguay was 131. Again, South America, a lot of times there has been high rates of inflation over the years, which is really not good for businesses. So here we're looking at the inflation rate in Paraguay. So it was 131 in 2011, 152 in 2012. And of course, this is a new minus old divided by old. What's the inflation rate? So I got this in Excel someplace. Yeah, equal, of course, new minus the old divided by the old. Of course, I got it wrong. I messed up my divide somehow. Divide by the old. And it comes out to 16%. So I'm going to go back, make it 16%, cross my fingers. I'm going to save and submit this thing. Yeah. Ah, I got it right. 130 out of 130. So take a look, do this homework. I will see you in class on Monday. Make sure you do your opening paragraph by Sunday night.